Hey, what's up YouTube, and welcome back to Stream City. I know a few of you were wondering, what, has Stream City been cancelled? Where is it? There's not been an episode in ages. We're back. Stream City never sleeps. So, it is worth mentioning a couple of changes in the city that aren't covered by the time-lapse. Number one, there is a modern 7-Eleven now. We have a convenience store in a convenient place. I designed and made this because I wanted to. Number two, somebody, I don't know who, decided to make another version of the McAllister house. Weirdly enough, near the old version. I don't know whether somebody's put it in some sort of cloning machine with a couple of minor differences, but it now exists and it looks, some might say, I don't know who, slightly better than the old version. As a side note, the city has also been overrun by heroes and villains. There is a giant octopus man fighting a mechanical spider in the business district. Oh, and last but not least, I have my own tower now. Now, I usually say this at the end of the videos, but I want you guys to be aware of this. Stream City is available to download if you are a channel member, Java Edition only. If you are a channel member, every single time Stream City gets an update, in a video like this, a brand new fresh download link is provided for channel members in the community tab, Java Edition only. So if that is something you are interested in, then just letting you know. But let's take a look at what I've been up to. Roll the film. So, first thing for this episode, I want to establish a street structure. So, coming back to the top of the hill that we made in the previous episode, using the hill-friendly, repeatable, British-looking terrace, but also looks good at semi-detached and also detached house, also looks good in a variety of materials as well. I really like it in some of the different stones and the bricks. Well, I've taken that house, and I'm kind of just figuring out how I want these streets to look. In my mind, at the top of the hill that we made in the previous episode, there is going to be a road that goes in two directions, left and right. As we're looking at it, on the left side, we are building a street, and this street is slowly going to taper downwards back to Main Street. Main Street is I guess currently the largest street in Stream City. It leads in and out of the suburbs and pretty much almost across the city. I'm also fixing the backs of these yards, so there is a pathway in between all of these houses. And in between these houses there are some stairs, and you can kind of like climb up and down into the little, I guess, shop area and in between the stores, and you can kind of like walk to the square. Through the backs of these houses, there's lots of jitties and generals and cut-throughs, so just like there would be in a real city. So the area that I'm actually building in now, where I'm adding some trees just to make it look a little bit nicer, I wouldn't mind some Britishy looking shops. This part of the city is very British to me. Like, as I walk the streets, that's kind of how it feels. So I think I'm actually going to add some small, like, corner shops and some, maybe, like, some small takeaway places and stuff to just kind of, like, make it feel a little bit more homey in that area. And you can see me here just extending the street outwards. So we've got about 6 houses on this side of the street. We'll have the same on the opposite side of the street. And we are slowly tapering the road down just so that it does connect in a logical way. And I'm getting ready to build the next side of the street as well, the opposite side of the street, where we will of course have houses eventually. Further refining the fact that all of these houses have to connect together at the back through a series of generals and jitties, make them all fix all of the fence and the corner of the gym where I semi-destroyed it in porting over these houses, just making it look all nice before I forget. It would be a very real possibility that I'd just place these houses and then immediately forget about them, which would be no good whatsoever. I want this to be a nice looking city. I don't want it to be a mess. So you may have noticed that there is a brand new modern 7-Eleven at the end of the street that we've been working on. I don't know how it got there. I didn't make it. Okay, that's a lie. So in that corner, I wanted to have a convenience store, and I thought, what better than 7-Eleven? I couldn't transfer it over from my Xbox, unfortunately, from my Bedrock world, so I decided to make a brand new one and make it a little bit more modern and make it a little bit better, hopefully. So if you have any interest in that, there is actually a tutorial on the channel. It's got a slushy machine, it's got a coffee machine in there, it's got a vending machine on the outside, it's all designed nice and sleek and modern, so it might be something that you're interested in. Anyway, on the opposite side of the top of the hill, I decided that I wanted to make a bit of a nicer street. So we've got some more modern looking suburban houses that are a little bit more unique. They're not as repeatable, and they have a little bit more land, they're detached, and I really like how they look. So it is a bit of a nicer area of Stream City, and the idea is that I want to make a hill, and I want to gradually gradiate upwards, and eventually have kind of like a nice big hill sort of overlooking Stream City a little bit, where we will keep the mansions and the more modern builds, which you'll be seeing a little bit later on. I'm also changing the end of the street here. I'm kind of making... I don't want to do this. I don't want the entire city to be on one level, on one flat plane. I don't want it to be a grid, necessarily. A little bit of a grid structure is cool because then everything connects together, but I don't want it to be just a set of straight lines. I want to add curves and I want to add interest. I do want things to be connected together, but not in just like an obvious way. So I've curved the end of the street, and I'm also trying to change the streets a little bit. So on this side of the street, I'm trying to... If on the previous side, you can see that on this side it is from left to right, we're kind of like getting slightly higher, right? We've added a little bit of a different depth and different altitudes for the houses. Well, on the opposite side of the street, it's a little bit different. So we're trying to add variation. We want different materials for the houses. And as a matter of fact, it might already be time to make some different houses. It might be time for us to make some different style, suburban-friendly terrace slash semi-detached slash city slash townhouses already. And I decided as well that I kind of wanted to add another bit of a kind of like a retail area. So where that big giant area of stone is, that's what we're going to be adding. We'll be adding some shops and stuff, or maybe even something different. I don't quite know yet, but I'll figure it. I will figure it out eventually. So at the top of this hill, which I'm thinking isn't big enough, the swimming pool's falling out of the bottom. At the top of this hill, I am adding a modern mansion. I think that I'm actually going to make this a lot steeper in the future, but that's the idea. Like, I want to have a set of land that kind of just curve. I want to add hills, I want to add texture to the environment, I want to add bends, I want it to look like a, you know, like a proper city. So I'm kind of just like carving out this little bit of land here. This is going to go directly to the right of the modern mansion. And I might even leave this one at this height. As I said, like, there's going to be a lot of these. So I clearly got bored of dealing with the modern mansion, and I ADD'd my way over to the suburbs. So I'm moving all of the camping stuff in the baseball field to make way for a park. So the park, I'm imagining a playground, which I have built out of world because it took some doing and a lot of designing, and I actually integrated a previous build that I only thought that I might use at the seaside, my ice cream stand. Well, I've kind of joined a couple of builds together and mashed it all together, and now I have a cool playground area, which we may get a little bit of a closer look at later. So opposite the playground area, and you can see the McAllister house, which probably isn't going to stay there. That also has a tutorial, by the way, brand new fresh tutorial. Well, the space in between the playground on the right and the McAllister house on the left, I want to be a football field. So just one of those random fields that you'd see on the edge of the suburbs, maybe sometimes even in the suburbs as well, just literally just built in amongst everything. I figured that I just want a football field, so 2 nets, kind of texture the grass a little bit so that it's not just boring. I also didn't want to just make it full-on lime terracotta because that would also be a bit boring. And I'm also just spacing things out a little bit as well, so I want the nets to be in particular positions, and I want the grass as well to look a particular way and also be spaced out in a particular way. There is no fast way of doing this, I don't think, although actually I do know a fast way. I could have actually copied a large portion of this. Instead of doing the individual lines, I could have done a few lines and then copied and pasted it. But hey, we live and learn. So this is how it's going to look roughly. Get rid of all of those little blotches of lime terracotta, and I think that that actually looks pretty good. So on the back of the playground area, I want there to be basketball courts. There's actually a similar-ish sort of park. Like where I live, this is kind of taking a little bit of inspiration. There's like a playground area for kids. You know, you can kind of, and, you know, adults that shouldn't really be on it as they'll probably break the stuff, i.e. me. You know. You know, sometimes you've just got to see if you can still do the monkey bars. I can't. So anyway, we have the playground area, we have the football. It's not really a pitch, it's just a field with 2 nets in it so that people can play football. But next to this, I wanted a couple of basketball courts, which you can see me working on right now. It takes a little bit of figuring out where spacing is. I'm kind of just going off the top of my head here. Like, I don't have a particular design in mind. I'm just kind of like, just trying to think how these things look and trying to make it fit into the particular dimensions that we have, and I've got it pretty much right at this point. So just a couple of nets, some markings on the ground. I kind of want some iron fence in between, or iron bars in between. Same effect. There's just like one way in and out of these courts, and I decided that I wanted a couple of these together because I think that they just look a little bit better instead of just having one. And of course, as I can just world edit it in and around, then, you know, it's not too big of a deal. You might notice that one side of the court is actually a little bit bigger than the other side. That eventually gets fixed. It's actually really annoying me as I look at it right now. And there we go, perfect. So after kind of like figuring out the markings, I just work on the design of the hoop, make it dead easy, very, very simple. Decide to go with a little bit more of a rectangular design instead of a curve. Very, very simple, quick and easy. Just making sure that everything's like, sometimes I get a little bit crazy with spacing. Like if behind like the court there is like a certain amount of space on one side, like there's 2 rows between the iron bars on one side of the court and there isn't on the other side, you know, it kind of bothers me. I don't know if you guys are the same sort of way, but you know, I like things in a particular fashion. Anyway, moving on the opposite side of the basketball courts, I wanted to have a couple of tennis courts. I was going to make a bunch of these in different colours because I thought that it could be quite fun, but I don't want them to kind of like outnumber the basketball courts. I want it to feel a little bit balanced, and whilst it didn't work out exactly how I wanted it to, like I kind of wanted almost like a grid of like 2 basketball courts on the right and 2 tennis courts on the left, and I kind of figured that they'd both be about the same sort of size. I decided that I did really want to move away from kind of like a grid system, which I was quickly falling back into. So I figured that a couple of tennis courts kind of just sitting on the side of the football field that we have would look a little bit better than kind of just smushing all these together in the corner. And I was going to make a bunch of different like tennis courts. Like I was going to make them all different colors and different styles, because as I understand, I'm not a tennis guy really, but there are different kinds of courts. There's like clay and there's like hard floor and grass and blah blah blah, the list goes on. I was going to make a few different ones, but I decided to stop at 2 to kind of once again keep it balanced with the basketball courts. I'm adding some benches on the side of the football field with a couple of bins next to them as well. It's very important to recycle, ladies and gentlemen. Don't leave rubbish on the floor. And I'm just working on the area around here. I just want to add the iron bars. I want to add the entrances. Kind of figure out how I want it to look around here as well. How I want to integrate it into the city. Well, I figured that I wanted to add a little bit of trees and grassland to the park as well. It would make sense. It is, of course, a park. So, kind of just keeping with the scheme that I used behind those suburban houses, except adding another tree in there, which is the spruce, I added a mixture of oak saplings, birch saplings, spruce saplings, some azaleas, some stones, some... as in stone buttons, stone pressure plates, and some grass, and some ferns, and that is a massive list, actually. I used all of those, too. I thought there was only a few things, but that was like a massive shopping list. So I added all of those things together, kind of just randomly, but also not semi-randomly, kind of in close proximity as well, so everything kind of like bleeds together, and it just makes like a lush, dense forest. And I realized with this patch of land, as you can see, that I'm just placing on the outside of the tennis courts, if you leave the saplings, some of them will grow before you have to grow them yourself, and you just make this like just a really nice, dense, colourful area. Like, I really like this part of the park, and unbeknownst to me, like in doing this, I've kind of made a big giant rectangle out of everything, which is kind of going against what I've been saying, where it's like I don't want everything to be a grid, but at least it's a bit of a contrast to like at least we've got a bit of green in there and some fields instead of everything just being the same sort of thing. No matter how hard I try, I always make things like how I don't want to make them, but it looks good anyway, so I'm happy regardless of the fact that it is just like ultimately like a big rectangle anyway. So on the opposite side of the park and the basketball court, I figured that I had to get the school placed. I don't know whether this is the ultimate position for the school, but it has to be in this general sort of area, and it makes sense that it'd kind of be in between these suburbs and these, I don't even know what to, is it still the suburbs with all of these terraced houses and these streets and all the shops? I don't know what the classification is, but I'm just integrating the school just next to here. It's kind of on Main Street, but set a little bit backwards. There's a little bit of land directly next to it. I don't know what that's going to be just yet. I really don't. It's probably going to have to be some shops. And I'm just cleaning the area up around it, because that was my ultimate goal, to get that park done and to get the school placed in this episode. And we've done that and so much more. So out the back of the school, I'm just adding a huge amount of just like grass out of the back. There might ultimately not be this much, but I'm just kind of trying to box things in. The reason that I'm doing this, and once again, I keep saying that I don't want to have kind of like a rigid system, but in enclosing the areas off, it kind of just helps with the design process. So if you limit the amount of space, it kind of like with the smooth stone area, it's like, oh, it's a small space, what has to go there? You know, some smaller builds or one big one. It just helps to define things a little bit better. It just helps a little bit better creatively. But we're just cleaning things up. The walls behind these houses, probably extend those a little bit. Clean up the patch of land around the modern house. And also the big giant holes that I've left in Stream City as well. And that is where we are going to leave it. In the next episode, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we are officially going to be moving out of the suburbs. It's been nice whilst it's lasted. We have a couple of shops here and there to design or repurpose from some of my older builds that we weren't able to bring over, but we're kind of at a point where we can develop in a few different directions, and I'm excited about it. We could work on the more naturalistic part of Stream City, building from the forest that we have kind of developed from the park area, or we could kind of go in the opposite direction and work on the more modern mansion mountainous areas. So we'll have to see where this goes. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and click the little bell next to the subscription button. That'll ensure that you get all of my videos sent directly to your sub box. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.